had always known I was born premature at 26 weeks, but I had no idea there was so much more to the story. And she told me that I survived a second trimester dilation and evacuation abortion. Their job there was so evil. And that just, it like sent chills through me to realize the spiritual battle that was actually going on at the very clinic where my mom was set to end my life.
Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome to the Lauren Muzyka Show. Several years ago, there was a point where it hit me. How would it change people's perspectives on abortion if we heard from the true victim, the baby in the womb? That's a powerful thought, right? I had a moment where I thought to myself, gosh, I wish we could. Then not too long after that, a new organization emerged called the Abortion Survivors Network. Many of you may not know that there are babies who survive abortions more often than we think. And their stories, to me, are among the most powerful in this debate as they are on the receiving end of this so-called choice and remind us that this whole thing is not just a mere set of talking points, but it involves real human lives and real human stories. One of the most powerful stories is that of Lauren Eden, who survived a second trimester abortion and at one point came to terms with that part of her story. I cannot wait for you all to hear from her today and see how it impacts your opinion on abortion, even if you find yourself kind of in the same place, how it kind of moves you more towards life and family. Let's go ahead and introduce our special guest. Lauren Eden is a national pro-life speaker, abortion survivor, and ministry veteran with nearly 20 years of teaching and communication experience. A second trimester dilation and evacuation abortion survivor, Lauren shares her powerful story of discovering the truth of her survival, finding healing in Christ, and learning that God's purposes are never thwarted by human plans. Before stepping into full-time speaking ministry in 2023, Lauren spent 19 years serving in the local church in the Atlanta area, leading adult discipleship, student and children's ministries. In 2024, she had the honor of serving as a national ambassador and Georgia advocate for the Abortion Survivors Network. Lauren has spoken at events across the country, including Marches for Life, pregnancy center banquets, pro-life conferences, schools, and churches of all sizes. Her story and message of life, hope, and identity in Christ have been featured on Fox News, CNN, Newsmax, EWTN, Live Action, and the Epoch Times. Lauren lives in Georgia with her husband and their 3 sons, her favorite ministry of all. Let's go ahead and welcome to the program, Lauren Eden. Hello there, Lauren. We've got 2 Laurens and 2 Laurens in pink today, so this is already going to be a lot of fun, right?
Kindred spirits. Thank you so
That's
much for
right.
having me.
You just have been somebody that I've watched from afar for so long, and you tell your story with just such beauty and grace and really bring it home for people. And so in that respect, again, I'm just in awe and admiration of you. So honored to have you on the show today. And kindred spirits already. So awesome. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and dive right into it. I'd love to hear a summary of your story, and how it was that you found out that you had survived an abortion. We were talking just before we hit record here about the fact that your birth mother had been to 4 clinics. 4 clinics. Wow. So yeah, can you take a moment and outline your story for us?
Yes. So I was actually 21 years old when I found out that I'm an abortion survivor. I had actually
Wow.
grown up in a really loving Christian home. I was raised by my biological parents.
Mm.
And when I was 21, I found out there was so much more to my story than I ever knew. And it was not something
Wow.
my parents ever meant to keep from me. They just didn't know how to tell me. I had always known I was born premature at 26 weeks. And I just
Yeah.
attributed my small size, my lung issues, all of those things to my premature birth, but I had no idea there was so much more to the story. So when I was 21, I had just graduated from the University of Georgia. I
Wow.
had a plan of actually going into broadcast journalism, and my plan was to tell other people's stories. And during my senior year of college, God just got a hold of me and told me that He had a different plan for my life. And I was
Mm.
very confused. I didn't know what that looked like. And I actually moved back home with my parents after graduating, and I was looking for a job and just really praying about what that meant. And that summer on June 20th of 2004, my mom came into my bedroom and said, "What are you doing today? I need to talk to you." And that led to a whole conversation about my birth story. And she
Wow.
actually told me, everything that had happened leading up to giving birth to me. And in that conversation, she told me that I survived a second trimester dilation and evacuation abortion.
Wow. Wow. So, Lauren, did your mom ever share why she had waited so long? I mean, we could probably make some logical conjectures about why somebody would wait to tell their child that this was part of their story, but did she ever share with you why, she hadn't told you earlier or why that particular day? Right?
Her words were that my parents, because of everything that happened in my story, my parents ended up getting married. There's a whole
Mm,
series of events that I can tell you about. But my mom says that having a premature baby, she just kind of put everything that happened leading up to my birth in a quote unquote box on a shelf. And
yeah.
she jumped into motherhood and having a premature baby, and life got really busy. She had two more children after me, and she never intended to keep this information from me. She was like, when is the right time to tell somebody this and
Yeah.
how? And so, um, by the time I got old enough that she felt like I could handle the information, it was more a matter of, her just thinking I was gonna think she was a horrible mother or hating
Mm,
her. She was really afraid of how it would change our relationship, and so it took her a long time to actually
yeah.
share that information with me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Did she share why she was seeking an abortion at the time? And, again, you had let me know that she had gone to 4 different clinics, you know? So can you unpack that part of the story for us a little bit?
Yeah, so she was an 18-year-old freshman in college at the University of Arkansas. My dad was a senior, and having a baby was clearly not part of their plan. My
Yeah.
mom was at college on a full ride academic scholarship, and she was
Um,
going to be the first in her family to graduate. She either wanted to go to law school or engineering school. And she just immediately, when she found out she was pregnant, she just saw that as a problem. And her words were,
mm,
I just needed to eliminate the problem. And
yeah.
so, she didn't see the humanity of the baby. All she saw was how her life was going to be interrupted and how her plans were going to be interrupted. And, I'm sure you've heard this time and time again in the work that you do, and I have too, that, um, that's what a lot of women see a pregnancy as. And so I
Mm,
can empathize with my mom and the situation that she was in. I didn't hate her. I didn't blame her, for the circumstances, but obviously, I'm so thankful that God intervened in the way that he did, and my mom ended up I ended up surviving, and my mom ended up keeping me, so
yeah, yeah. And what do you know about that part of the journey where she went to 4 different abortion facilities? And you even shared with me kind of a chilling story about the Dallas facility that she had been at. Actually, a facility that, of course, this would be years later, but that I prayed and sidewalk counseled outside of until it was eventually, leveled to the ground and put out of business and everything. I mean, that was quite a day, remembering when that abortion facility went out of business. But yeah, tell us more about her actually seeking the abortion.
yeah, so when she found out that she was pregnant with me, she went to tell my dad the news, and they cried about it, they prayed, my dad was a believer at the time, my mom was not. So,
Oh, wow.
my dad
Yeah.
prayed for my mom and prayed that God would give them
Mhm.
a wisdom about what to do, and then they said they just kind of tried to stuff the information down and not really think about it. They got back into their classes,
Mm,
they focused on their schoolwork. And about a month later, my mom realized that she might need to have a plan. And so
yeah.
she made up her mind right away that she wanted to have an abortion. Um, so
Mm,
she went to tell my dad this news, and my dad was not on board with my mom's plan. My dad actually begged my mom not to have an abortion. He begged her to reconsider. He told her that he didn't feel that that was the right answer. And my mom's thought was like, you helped me get into this situation, but now I don't feel like I'm supported by you. So she was angry with my dad
Mm.
about his response. And she left his apartment mad. And she made an appointment at the closest clinic to their school, which was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She
Mm.
didn't have enough money when she found out how much the abortion was gonna cost. So she actually had to call her mom and ask her for money, and her mom supported her decision, sent her a check in the mail, and when she got the check, she actually had written it for the wrong amount. And so my mom
Wow.
had to delay her appointment, wait for another check to come. She had a friend take her to this abortion clinic in Tulsa, and
Wow.
when they got there, they went to the address that was in the phone book at the time. They didn't have the internet, they didn't have GPS. So they looked it up in the phone book and went to the address. And the doors to the building were closed and there was nobody there. So they found a
Wow.
payphone. They called the clinic. The clinic actually told them they were located on the other side of Tulsa and that she wouldn't make it in time for her appointment. And so she had to reschedule. So she just encountered a lot of delays in her quote unquote plan, which I look at as
Mm.
God. But
Yeah.
she ended up going back to that clinic. And when they measured her, they did an ultrasound and they said she was measuring just over 13 weeks pregnant. And in Tulsa at the time, in Oklahoma at the time, they could only do abortions up to 12 weeks. So they actually turned my
Wow.
mom away. Then she went to a clinic in Little Rock and made an appointment there. They did abortions up to 15 weeks at that clinic. And my dad actually had to give my mom a ride to her friend's house, and her friend was going to take her to the clinic. And they were driving through the mountains of northern Arkansas, and my mom actually laid her head down on my dad's lap and fell asleep. And my dad says he put his hand on my mom's stomach and began to pray, God, please intervene and save this baby. And they came around the corner of a mountain road, and he says it was like fog he had never seen before. It was so dense, dropped on that mountain road in front of them. And he couldn't see the hood of the hood ornament on the front of his car. The fog was so dense. And so he kept trying to drive, but he couldn't. He found it to be too dangerous. And so he turned around and they had to reschedule her appointment again. So the next day, her friend picked her up and took her to the clinic in Little Rock. They did another ultrasound. It was 2 days after her ultrasound in Tulsa, and she measured 15.3 weeks pregnant. And the numbers didn't make sense.
Wow.
And so again,
Golly.
her plan was curtailed and she was really frustrated. The clinic staff in Little Rock referred her to a clinic in Dallas. And she actually took a chemistry final, and her friend picked her up and drove her to a clinic in Dallas. That clinic could do abortions up to 20 weeks. And she
Mm.
went into an ultrasound room. They measured the size of the baby inside of her. They told her she was 21.6 weeks pregnant. And it had been less than 2 weeks since she had been to the clinic in Little Rock. And so, again, the numbers didn't make sense. And she proceeded to have a little bit of a nervous breakdown in that clinic. The staff, surrounded her. They were like, "We're going to help you." "Quote unquote, help you." So they said, "We have a sister clinic on the other side of Dallas, and they will take our ultrasound results, and you can go there first thing in the morning, and they'll do the abortion procedure." And so that's what she did. She made an appointment at the clinic on the other side of Dallas, which was we believe was Aaron's Women's Center that you referred to. Um, and, that night, they were actually staying with the friend of her or the sister of the friend that was taking her to the clinic and who lived in Dallas, and she was about the same number of weeks pregnant that my mom was. And so she started
Wow.
asking her sister what they were doing, why they were there, and when she found out my mom was planning to have an abortion procedure, she started talking to her sister and saying, "Does your friend realize that this is not just a clump of cells. This is a baby growing inside of her." She was really not happy with the reason my mom was staying with them. And
Mm.
she started to talk to her about the humanity of the baby. And my mom says she had never heard that before. Nobody had ever shown her what was on the screen. Nobody had ever educated her about the pregnancy or how far along she was or how developed the baby was. And so for the first time, she started to realize the humanity of that child inside of her.
Mm.
But the next morning, she went to the clinic anyway, and they started a 2-day dilation and evacuation abortion procedure. So they actually inserted the laminaria into her cervix, which was designed to dilate the cervix. And they told her to go back to where she was staying and that she would probably experience some pain. And if she did, to take some Tylenol. And the next morning, they scheduled her for the second half of the procedure where they would go in and pull the baby out piece by piece, limb by limb.
Wow. Absolutely unbelievable. And you said that there was something going on outside that clinic, right? At the time?
So my mom doesn't remember anything happening at the time, but
Yeah.
I was telling my story at an event a few months ago, and someone shared with me whenever I talked about that clinic. She said, "Lauren, do you know which clinic that was in Dallas?" And so it sent us on this whole rabbit trail of trying to figure out what clinic it was, where it was located, and we found out that it was Aaron's Women's Center. And
Yeah.
she told me a story. She used to pray outside of Aaron Women's Center, and she said that there was clearly a spiritual battle going on there. That there were a bunch of witches who worked there, and that they would walk around. This was the clinic staff. They would walk outside of the clinic with voodoo dolls, and they were taking needles and like stabbing them over and over and over again. And she said the things that they would say and the way that they handled, their job there was so evil. And that just, I mean,
Gosh.
it like sent chills through me to realize the
Yeah.
spiritual battle that was actually going on at the very clinic where my mom was set to end my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Gosh, what a powerful story. I mean, and I just go back to your father in the car praying over your mom and over where
Mhm.
you were inside of her and asking that the Lord preserve and protect you. And obviously, we know prayer is powerful and can change things. And there's no words for that, you know?
Mhm.
I mean, already showing his protection and his paternity as a father, a true father to you already while you were in the womb, right? And of course, I know you went then on a journey of healing and really having to forgive, that initial decision that your mom made, right? So, do you know if you don't mind me asking, like how did you actually survive the abortion? Like what actually happened? Because I guess at that stage of pregnancy, it typically can be a 2-day procedure.
Mhm.
Laminaria dilates the cervix and then, they go ahead and I mean, the procedure is to pull the baby out in pieces. But you survived. So what do you know what actually happened that preserved your life?
I do. So after my mom had the laminaria inserted, she went back to the place she was staying, her friend's sister's house, and she said she was in a lot of pain. Her
Mm.
body was essentially in labor. It was dilating. Her friend was talking to her about the humanity of this baby, and my dad was doing everything on his end that he could to try to stop my mom, and he had been from the very beginning, calling her constantly. And around 11 o'clock that night, my dad called my mom one last time in an attempt to try to stop my mom from going to the abortion clinic the next day. He had actually tried to get an injunction from an attorney in the Dallas area to stop my mom.
Wow.
He had talked to a pro life doctor in the Little Rock area and asked if he could get my mom to come and see him. Was there any chance I would survive? Because she's already gone halfway through with this procedure. And so he had gone to the home of a young married couple from his church. And this couple's name is Bill and Jana. And Bill and Jana were praying with my dad that night. And my dad felt led to call my mom. And my dad asked if he could pray with my mom. And when my dad was done praying, my mom was crying and she was in pain. And she said, "If you will drive to Dallas and meet me at the clinic tomorrow, I'm 90% sure I won't go through with the rest of the procedure." So that was the
Wow.
turning point. My dad wanted with everything in him to go to Dallas, but he had no money to get there. And Bill and Jana handed my dad his credit card and said, "Do whatever it takes go to Dallas and save your baby. And if your wife or if your girlfriend needs a place to stay, she can stay with us. And so my dad left at 4 o'clock in the morning and drove to Dallas, and got there just after my mom's appointment started around 9 o'clock. And he says when he walked in, she wasn't in the waiting room and they wouldn't give him any information about where she was. And he was just pacing up and down the halls praying, Lord, please, we haven't come this far. Please intervene. And when he turned around, the elevator doors actually opened and my mom was standing there and she had overslept. So she ended up being late for her appointment. And they went in together. They told the abortionist they weren't going to go through with the rest of the procedure. And he told her of all the risks she was taking. He said, you and the baby are both in danger here. You could hemorrhage. Um, you're probably going to miscarry anyway. This baby could have, severe complications. This is dangerous. And she said, I'm willing to take the chance. And so they
Wow.
left the clinic, and his instructions were to drive back, lying down in the back seat of the car with her feet propped up so that the baby wouldn't fall out. So her body was just completely, fully dilated and ready to give birth. And then when they got back to the Little Rock area, well, first of all, my mom was kind of recounting for my dad all of these obstacles that she had been facing along the way. And my dad told my mom, I've been keeping up with you through your friends, and every clinic you've gone to, I have been praying. And I've had my church family praying, and I've had our friends at school praying that God would intervene. And he says today that he recounts 15 miracles that God did along the way and specific answers to prayers at each clinic that my mom went to, with her not having enough money and then the fog in the mountains. And he prayed in Little Rock that the ultrasound would malfunction and the numbers didn't add up when she actually had her ultrasound procedure. So time and time again, God intervened. And then she moved in with Bill and Jana. My mom went to see a pro-life OBGYN. He said another miracle was that her cervix actually closed back up. And so she wasn't dilated anymore. But on July 26, 1982, I was born premature. She went into labor early. And the doctors gave me a very small chance of actually even surviving, because of everything else that had taken place along the way.
Wow. And what age were you born at?
I
Like
was born at 26 weeks.
26 weeks. Wow. Yeah. And so you would be considered, is that still micro preemie
Mhm.
stage? Yeah. And do you know how long you were in the hospital for?
53 days.
53 days. Oh, wow. Lauren, that is just amazing. There are actually little parts of your story there that I did not know, and I'm just sitting here in awe. I mean, what do you say? Like, just the power of prayer and God
Mhm.
clearly intervening, right, every step of the way. And I'm guessing your mom eventually became a Christian, right?
She
And
did. This
yeah.
through Bill and Jana. She says that Bill and Jana were the first people that were ever the hands and feet of Jesus to her, and,
Mm,
she was actually gonna place me for adoption. That didn't work
mm,
out because the whole team at the hospital didn't get the word, and they showed me to my mom. She fell in love with
wow.
me. My dad, of course, wanted to keep me the entire time, and so he was ecstatic.
Mm,
But they ended up getting married, and I was able to be at their wedding 2 weeks after I was discharged from the hospital. Um,
oh.
and Bill and Jana helped them plan the wedding, and, my mom became a Christian because of the miracles she saw God do and the way this young married couple loved her so unconditionally.
Oh my goodness, that's so amazing. Um, the question that I have written down here, and again, I don't even mean to make this an obvious question, but just for you to put this in your own words, like when your mom told you this, like how did that impact you in the moment and then in the coming days? And how did it affect your relationship with your parents and just kind of how you saw life at that moment?
Mhm. It was shocking, in that
Yeah.
moment. It felt like an out of body experience. I describe it as, like, I feel like I was just watching a scene from a movie unfold, because it really like, the whole story feels like a movie that's not
Yeah.
real, and then I had to come to
Yeah.
terms with the fact that, no, this is my life and this is my story and I'm that baby, and
Yeah.
so I almost disassociated from it for a while. It was like, "N this is so crazy," like, none of it even makes sense, and, um how could this be my story? So that was kind of my first reaction. My
Yeah.
second reaction was, holy cow, God has a purpose and a plan for me. Like, my heavenly Father
Mhm.
saved my life.
Yeah.
And also in that moment, my this was a long conversation. This was not just like a 30-minute, "Hey, Lauren, I have something I need to tell you." I mean, it turned into like the whole afternoon of my mom and I
Mm.
talking. I could see how hard it was for my mom. I mean, it was very
Yeah.
clear to me that my mom was my best friend. I was raised in a loving home, and I'm very fortunate that that was my situation and that God intervened in such a way in my mom's life. Um,
Mm.
but I knew that my mom needed to hear that I forgave her. I mean, I could tell in that
Mm.
moment that she had been carrying this weight for so many years, and I wanted to see her free from that. And so my first
Mm.
reaction at the end of our conversation was, "Mom, you know that I love you and I forgive you." Um,
Wow.
and I think that was the beginning of my mom's healing journey. And obviously,
Yeah.
it's been a road, a process, for
Yeah.
her, but I'm so proud of her. It took her so much. It was courageous for her to tell me my story. She didn't have to. She could have
Yeah.
kept it a secret. I never had to know, but in that moment, it really clarified I was struggling with what God was calling me to do with my life, and it really clarified that He
Mhm.
had a purpose and a plan for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now that your story is out there, what do you want the world to know about abortion survivors like you? What are some of the misunderstandings and how would you speak into that?
Well, I have been so blessed and so fortunate to meet a lot of abortion survivors, and our stories are so varied. Um,
Mm.
I have met survivors that were pre-Rose survivors who, their parents tried coat hanger abortions or throwing themselves down the stairs. I've met people who have, like Melissa, who have survived saline infusion abortions and born alive in a hospital or a clinic. Um, People who have taken the chemical abortion pill and it didn't work. So there's just such a wide range of stories. But what I think I want people to know the most is that no life God creates is an accident. In our world
Yeah.
right now, this issue of abortion is seen as such a political issue. It's such a polarizing issue in our world today. But it's really
Mm.
a simple moral issue that is
Mhm.
plaguing our country right now. Babies are dying every single day because we're trying to justify this issue of abortion as a woman's rights issue. And there are
Yeah.
two people involved. It's the mom and the baby, and we are the
Yeah.
faces of those babies. And I think that's the thing the Lord has just made so clear to me is the humanity behind it all. Um,
Mm.
we don't do a good job of painting that picture, that my mom's
Mhm.
friend's sister was trying to paint to my mom, like, "This is a real baby inside of you." And so I just think people need to stop and think about the fact that there are 2 lives here, not just
Yeah.
1. It's not just about the mom, but the baby, is equally as valuable as well.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, you put such a human face on that, all of you at the Abortion Survivors Network. It takes your breath away sometimes, and you realize this is not some sort of political debate. This is a real human thing. I mean, words fail, right? So I'm so grateful for so many of you that, as you have received that call to tell your story, you've done so willingly and openly, and that's not always easy. And with that, the next question is in this post Roe landscape, where are some of the challenges that you all have at the Abortion Survivors Network and the work that you do?
Well, I think, we don't have a great system of reporting and accountability in our country when
Mm.
it comes to abortion survivors. I was just in Canada speaking, and I was pulling Canadian data because I was speaking at a couple schools, and I was trying to really help students understand the reality of what they're facing in Canada because they have no restrictions on abortions in Canada. But Canada actually has the most reliable reporting system, and
Hmm.
their data shows that 0.21% of babies in Canada survive abortion procedures. So out of all the
Wow.
abortions procedures that take place in Canada, 0.21% of babies survive. There, that's about 300 babies per year. They do 101,000 and some odd number of abortions in Canada per year. We do more than 1,000,000 in the United States. So if you take that same statistic, that 0.21%, we're talking about an incredible number of babies who survive abortions. And those are just the ones that we know about. That doesn't even take into consideration the ones that are done at home, the chemical abortion pill, which is becoming rampant in our world today. So I
Yeah.
just think that we need more reliable data and that represents the
Mm.
faces of abortion survivors. We don't have any policy that has passed so far about like born alive legislation. I think that's a huge issue that we face because we hear
Mm.
stories of babies surviving and then their mom doesn't want them and the abortionist asks, what do you want me to do? Um,
Mhm.
so we just need the same standard of care in our country for babies like me who survive that we do for
Mm.
any other child in the womb. And then we also need a reliable system of reporting so that we know how often this is actually taking place. And
Yeah.
at ASN, we know it's taking place fairly often.
Yeah, it's happening a lot more than we think. I know at one point I had looked at some of the stats, at least what was available, right, and blown away. Like, I mean, even in Canada, when you think about 300 children who have survived, and again, some of these, what they've already been through and the effects, physics, sometimes the physical effects on their life, and of course, coming to terms spiritually with that part of their story. You all at the Abortion Survivors Network are providing such a beautiful ministry and community over there and helping people to take this healing journey, and however nuanced it is. And kudos to you for that. Um, some of you have written a book, and you have a book now. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how people can get a hold of it?
I do. So my book just came out a couple weeks ago, so it's still brand new. It's called Miracle Baby: The Story I Was Born to Tell. And the
Mm.
title comes from the fact that my dad called me his miracle baby. And a lot of abortion survivors actually share that common thread that their parents called them a miracle baby and they didn't know why until they found out
Mm.
their story. And for me, I thought it was because I was premature. And so I never knew there were so many miracles that God did. But as I've started to share my story publicly, people have started asking me, like, we know you can't share everything all in this 30-minute segment that you have to speak to us. So, like, what's the rest of the story? What are all the miracles that God did? You should write a book about it. And so that's kind of how it all
Mm.
came about. People started asking for me to share all the miracles. So it goes through my, finding out my story, my life leading up to that point. And then I actually interviewed my parents and took snippets of my whole conversation with them and shared their
Mm.
story in the book as well. So it's available on Amazon and yeah, it's a good read. I'm getting a lot of positive reviews about people saying that they've really enjoyed reading the entire story.
I love that. That's awesome. I hope everybody will go check that out. So powerful. Lauren, just in closing here, what gives you hope in this kind of crazy post-Roe landscape where a lot of people still do not uphold the sanctity of life and the sanctity of the human family? What gives you hope in the midst of this battle right now?
I think that God is in charge, and my story is proof of that. My story is proof that no human can thwart God's plans. And
Yeah.
I think that ultimately He created life, He designed life, He defends lives, and He brings people that He uses as His soldiers, boots on the ground to do His work in our world today. And I see so many examples of those people all over the place.
Yeah.
Bill and Jana and my dad were all examples in my story, even the sister that, told her friend, like, does your friend realize the humanity of this baby? And so I think the biggest thing is just we need more people to speak up and use their voice
Yeah.
and be the light in the darkness because evil's not going to win. We know the end of the story, but we do have a responsibility and a role to play.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Gosh, there's just so much here. I wish we need to have you back on the show. This is amazing. And I just really hope that those of you who are listening to this have heard Lauren's testimony, that you'll help get this story out there. Because again, I think in no other way, the testimonies of those who have survived abortions they're real. I mean, truly, they're the most powerful, right? Because now we get to put a human face on the population that rarely speaks into this debate, and that is the child in the womb. And so, Lauren, thank you for being courageous, and thank you for being willing to share your story and your family's story. To me, it's just one big, beautiful victory story, you know. And we just love you all at the Abortion Survivors Network. Such a beautiful witness, the community that you're providing. You know, it had hit me recently too that you're needed more than ever today because there's a lot of women that are availing themselves of, for example, abortion pill reversal. And it
Mhm.
was Melissa Oden, your founder and your leader, that had shared with me, also a dear friend, right, had also shared with me that now more than ever, they're getting you have more and more that are joining this ministry because they have survived the 2-pill chemical abortion regimen, or at least the first pill of the 2-pill chemical abortion regimen. And thanks to Heartbeat International for providing that ability to save the pregnancy, to save the baby in the middle of what is now the most popular form of abortion in the United States. And so, y'all are going to be doing even more beautiful work in the coming days. So, thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing with us today, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me and for the important work you do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Everyone, thank you again so much for joining me. When I pause and think about this beautiful testimony that Lauren just shared with us, I think about the companions in the journey that are so important. Lauren's dad and Bill and Jana, the couple that took in Lauren's mom and witnessed to her and were the hands and feet of Jesus. The friend that spoke about the humanity of the baby in the womb, Lauren herself, right? It is so important that we are these people in each other's lives, that we give witness to uh, what it means to know life and to uphold the sanctity of every human life and the human family. And of course, now to just see the evolution of Lauren's family and her mom coming to Christ. Again, what a beautiful victory story. And I just think about how it started with that prayer of her father. Prayer is so powerful. So sometimes when you feel helpless, right, don't forget that prayer can change things. And then from there, we walk out the victory. We're not just hearers of the word, we're doers of the word. And the way that Lauren's dad showed up at the clinic, was ready and willing to receive her mom when she was ready to say yes. How much more, gosh, do we need to be doing that for each other and learning from that, right? So powerful. So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Abortion Survivors Network. We appreciate you and love you. All right. And thanks to all of you once again for joining me for another episode of the Lauren Muzyka Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on Facebook Live, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Get this story out, everybody, and thanks so much.